Okay, guys, good evening. Hopefully you guys can hear me. And, yep, good evening. And so like I said, I figured out how to start recording our sessions. And so I've done it a few times, but I think it might be useful. If you guys if you missed something, you want to go back and see what I said or what somebody said, you can do that. So I'll start recording the sessions. And then it takes a little bit of time for them to upload the Blackboard, but I'll upload them to Blackboard and then you can watch them. I mean, you don't have to watch them if you're here, but if you need to go back and see something, you can do that. Okay, and so, let me see. So what we're going to do today, well, first of all, since we switched to online only, we've done a lot already. We've covered 4 chapters in 2 meetings. So we covered chapters 6, 7, 8, 9. And I know it's been a challenge since we switched to the online only instruction, but I think we got the main concepts and problems across. I did hear some feedback, and maybe the most difficult thing so far was the last stuff we did, in particular in chapter 9 with the game theory issues. And so there'll be plenty of time to do more examples of that when we prepare for the midterm. And if anybody needs extra help, I can do like a bonus session and just help you guys with that concept. But it looks like a lot of people already turned in the homework that's due today. But if you have any problems or you need extra help, and you can't get it done on your own and you need questions, you can let me know and I can help you with it. So just before we get started, any more questions or comments based on what we're doing? I mean, kind of the switch to online and what anything you guys want me to try to do differently. I'm going to record the sessions, which I think might be helpful if you guys want to type something again or if you missed it. But anything else, you can let me know now or you can post it in the chat, and I'll try to make it as good as I can given what we're working with. Okay, yeah. So looks like everybody turned their sound off, but yeah, if you want to ask a question, you can put your sound off, but otherwise try to leave it off. And you're welcome. And if you have any comments or questions, you can post them to the chat like we always do. Or if you have bigger questions, go ahead and ask them. And so yeah, we're only going to do 1 chapter today. And so here's the plan for the next couple times. And so alright, so we're going to do chapter 16 today, and we're not going to do the whole chapter. We're going to do the main problem or model that I usually teach from here, which is basically looking at the production possibilities curve that we looked at, I believe, in chapter 1, and applying that to like a gains from trade analysis, and so we can use that model to show gains from trade. Okay, and so we're going to do a couple practice problems. And so I say we're not going to do a whole lot through the chapter and lecture or PowerPoint today. We're going to spend most of our time doing a couple of practice problems. Really, that's all you need to know for the homework and the exam. And I said these questions are a little bit longer than our normal homework questions, but you just got to, if you do it a few times, you should be fine. And I have a couple complete examples you can look at, and there's just 1 question for the homework. And there'll probably be a similar question on the first midterm, which is take home. Okay, and so we'll do chapter 16 today, and I'm not sure how long that will take, but if we have extra time or if you want to stay longer, I can answer any more questions you have for the game theory issues. Also, next time, the only thing I have scheduled for the meeting is to go over review questions for the exam. So there's no new material next week. What I want to do next week is any of the complications or problems you guys do extra help on, we can do that. And well, I'll go through just like a practice midterm. And if you guys want more assistance, I can do the ones you want more help on. But otherwise, there's no new material next week. But please try to come because I want to make sure you guys are prepared for the midterm. It's not a. I mean, you can use your notes and take your time, but so that's the plan. So it really shouldn't be as stressful as a normal midterm because we'll go over the review and the practice problems next time, and then you really have a week to do it. But I'm not going to make it much longer than I would if you just came to class and took it. Okay, so if we're all good on everything, let's start with chapter 16. Okay, and so when you look at the recording, you'll just see the screen share of whatever I'm showing you. You won't see the chat feature, and so if you want to save anything from the chat feature, you're going to have to like copy that and paste that yourself, because it doesn't show that when you depends on what I'm showing you, but it's not going to show the chat feature or like the participants, but it will show you everything I do on my screen share. Okay, so let's open up chapter 16 with notes and solutions. Let's start with that. Okay, and then let's also open up, we're not going to use much of this, but let's open up PowerPoint for chapter 16. Okay, so like I said, there's really one big model or type of problem I want you guys to learn from this chapter, and that's the gain from trade using the production possibilities curve analysis. And so let's kind of intro that, and then we'll do kind of two big problems on that, and that'll help you prepare for the one question for the homework assignment, which is very similar, and then I'll have another exam question that'll be similar to these ones. Okay, so for the two main concepts, I want to show you guys how you can use two different countries or two different economies and their production possibilities curve, some examples of the two good economies. And we're going to show that you can always get gains from trade. Even if one country is better at producing both things, you can still make a clear gain from trade for both countries if you find out which country has a competitive advantage in producing the two things. Okay, so we're going to see that basically whatever country or economy has the lowest opportunity cost in producing one good relative to the other, then they're going to specialize in that, and then both countries can get better off. All right, so we're going to look at slides 7 through 12 briefly, but basically what I'm trying to show you is how you can extend the production. Remember when we did the production possibilities curve for just one economy, like the forklifts and the whatever it was, automobiles and forklifts, stuff like that, and we showed where we explained that you could only move the curve out if you had a technological improvement or if you had gains in trade. So here we're showing that you can move your curve out, obtain more if you get gains from trade from some other country by specializing. Okay, you can only see the Word document. So that's what you're supposed to see right now, right? Yeah. So I have a screen share on, but oh no, I was explaining the graph that we talked about in chapter 1. Okay, so let's switch to the PowerPoint. Slides 7 to 12 in chapter 16. Okay, so yeah, I guess the chapter 16 PowerPoint doesn't. We're going to do the graph, but I don't have it right here in the PowerPoint. But let me just show you this. Let me go back to chapter 1 real quick just to show you what we're talking about. Okay. Yeah. Remember something like this where we have the two countries or the two products? Oh, that's okay. So we have the two products, and we're showing the opportunity costs. If you want to produce more of one thing, then you got to give up some of the others.
On the camera, no.
What? Okay. So let's go back to chapter 16, and we're going to again apply this analysis to two countries. Okay. So let me briefly just set up or give you the assumptions for this model, and then we'll do. We really can't learn how to do it until we do the big problems and examples. All right. So we're going to have two nations or two economies, and so we're back on the chapter 16 PowerPoint, slide 7. And so here we're just setting up how you determine a comparative advantage, and then the country with the comparative advantage in that good is going to specialize. Okay, so we're going to have two nations. They both have the same size labor force. They both have constant costs in each country, but they have different costs in between the countries. So the cost or the opportunity cost is going to help them determine what they should specialize in. Well, here we just have an example where we have the U.S. and I believe Mexico, and the U.S. has lower costs in producing both, but we'll see that they can still specialize and get more gains from trade, even though they're better or can produce both goods least costly compared to Mexico in this example. Okay, so the opportunity cost we know is just the slope of the curve. It's what you give up to produce more of one good in relation to the other good you gave up. Okay, so we're gonna look at some examples of how these countries or economies can specialize and then trade, and then in the long run, after the specialization and trade, they'll both be better off in terms of what they get in their consumption or production.
I'm sorry, can you go back to the other slide, please? Just really quick.
Sure.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so we're going to say an example where each country specializes if they have a comparative advantage, and the economy that can produce the good with the lowest domestic opportunity cost, and their economy is going to specialize in doing that, and by doing that, we'll see if they both can gain. Okay, so you can't see the graph here. It's just kind of setting up an example, but the opportunity cost of 1 ton of soybeans for this example is 3 tons of avocados in the U.S. and 4 tons of avocados in Mexico. And so don't worry about where these examples are coming from yet. I just want you to see that because the lowest opportunity cost for this purpose is just which country or which economy gives up the least. Okay, so if the U.S. gives up 3 tons of avocados every time they produce soybeans, compared to Mexico giving up 4 tons, that means that the U.S. has a comparative advantage in producing soybeans because they give up less. And so they're going to specialize in that because they can do it least costly. Okay. All right, ready for the next slide?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so again, this is just a quick example that we're going to spend a lot more time looking at our own examples. But these are just different production alternatives, similar to what we looked at in Chapter 1 with the production possibilities curve for just one country. And so there's different combinations of some output or production, that each country can produce. And so they can, for example, Mexico can produce 0 avocados, 15 soybeans, or 20 avocados, 10 soybeans, or any combination on this, any of these points, or any points that follow the same trade-off. So each time they produce more of one thing, they have to give up some of the other at the same rate. And the U.S. can do something similar, but so it looks like every time Mexico produces 20 avocados, they give up 5 soybeans, right? And every time they produce 5 soybeans, they give up 20 avocados. Whereas the U.S., every time they produce 30 avocados, they give up 10 soybeans. In the U.S., every time they produce 10 soybeans, they give up 30 avocados. Okay, so it's going to be just the same rate, a linear trade-off, but you want to figure out what one country gives up in terms of the other good that they had to give up to produce more of the other. All right, as if we see, both countries are going to specialize in the good. They have the lowest opportunity cost to produce. All right, so I just explained these things that Mexico has to give up 4 tons of avocados to get 1 soybean, and the U.S. only gives up 3 tons of avocados to get 1 soybean. Okay, but for avocados, Mexico has to give up just a fourth a ton of soybeans to get a ton of avocados, and the U.S. has to give up a third. So even though, again, the U.S. can do both things least costly, if the U.S. specializes in soybeans and Mexico specializes in avocados, they're both going to be better off from specializing and trading because comparative advantage-wise, the U.S. gives up less for soybean production and Mexico gives up less for avocado production. So they both have a comparative advantage where soybeans go to the United States and avocados go to Mexico. Okay, so if you need any of these slides again, or to go back, just let me know. Okay, and so we're going to develop terms of trade. So they're both going to specialize, but both countries want to consume both goods, so they have to develop or determine a trade that'll make both countries better off. Okay, and so we know that the terms of trade basically have to be in between, or they both have to be better off by trading than they would by just producing it themselves. Okay, so the U.S. currently, every time they produce a soybean, they give up 3 avocados. So if they want to trade with Mexico, they got to get more than 3 avocados in that trade. Because if they didn't, they could just do the same thing, just producing it themselves. All right, and Mexico, who's going to do avocados only, they can currently get, they give up 1 soybean for every 4 avocados. So they have to do better in the trade. They have to pay less than 4 avocados for 1 soybean. If they didn't pay less than that, then they can just do it themselves. Right? So they both have to agree in a trade or terms, like 1-to-1 or 4-to-1 or whatever, that makes them both better off. So they're gonna find out what they both would need to do better than, and then determine a trade between the two. It could be a number of things, but in this case, if the trade is 1 soybean for every 3.5 avocados, or vice versa, then both countries will be better off because they've both done better than they could have by just doing it themselves. Okay, so there's a lot going on in this chart, and we're going to do a couple of examples that will hopefully make more sense when all this is going on. But what we're going to calculate here is just these are the chosen output points before the specialization. So before, Mexico was picking a point in their production cost place curve, producing 24 avocados and 9 soybeans, where the U.S. was producing 33 avocados and 19 soybeans. Okay, then they're going to specialize. You'll see what happens when they specialize is Mexico is only going to produce avocados, so they start with 60 avocados, no soybeans, because they only specialize in avocado production. Whereas the U.S. is going to specialize in the other good soybeans, so they start with 30 soybeans and no avocados, because they're both specialized. And they're doing that because they can be better off with the trade. So the trade is, it was 1 to 3.5, and so just, they can do if they multiply that, if they do 10 soybeans in the terms of that trade. So 1 to 3.5 is the same deal as 10 to 35. Okay, so Mexico is going to get 10 soybeans and trade 35 avocados. The U.S. is going to get 35 avocados and trade 10 soybeans. And then you can look at their outputs after the trade, where we got 25 avocados here and 10 soybeans for Mexico. We get 35 avocados and 20 soybeans for the U.S. And then they both are better off if you look at the output for Mexico for avocados after the specialization trade. They started with 24, and then after the specialization trade, they're at 25, so they gain 1. And for the soybeans, they started with 9. Now they have 10, so they gain 1 of those 2. And the U.S. started with 33 avocados. Now they have 35, they got 2 of those. And they started with 19 soybeans. And now they have 20, so they gain 1 of those. So each country gained something in all the goods they produce. Okay, so there was a lot of information here, and we're going to do 2 big examples that will help us understand this more. But the idea here is just figure out which country has the comparative advantage, and that each country should specialize, and then they both can be better off when they specialize, determine a fair trade, and calculate the gains from trade. Okay, so any questions on this for now, or any slides when you see again before we move on to an example? Okay, let's go to this. All right, so now we're going back to the the study guide for chapter 16. And so again, I already opened this up, but it's chapter 16 with notes and solutions Word document. And I did a lot of the work in Excel in this example, chapter 16. So I'm going to open that up too. Okay, so the chapter 16 study guide, and so I just wanted to show you those quick slides to get the concept out there, but we're going to do some examples to hopefully help us understand it better. And there's an optional video you can watch on specialization of trade if you want to watch that, but what I want to do mostly today is go through these examples so you guys understand this for the homework question and then the exam question. Okay, so these are a couple examples from your textbook, and I kind of modified them to be the same question for both, and that way you get the process down, and you can just kind of do the same thing every time, even though you have different countries and examples. Okay, and so the questions look kind of long at first, and they're probably longer than normal for homework question-wise, but we don't have a whole lot. We're not going to do a whole lot of new concepts except for this. So I think if we get this done, we'll be successful today. All right. So let me go through this one. So the following hypothetical production boxes of tables are for New Zealand and Spain. Assume that before specialization in trade, the optimal product mix for New Zealand is alternative B, and for Spain it's alternative F. Okay, so these are the production alternatives for both countries. We're producing apples and plums, and New Zealand's going to start at B at 20 and 10, and Spain's going to start at F, 20 apples and 40 plums. Okay, and so part A is just to draw the curves, the initial curves for both countries. So part A for this type of question is draw the production possibilities curves for New Zealand and Spain, including the optimal product mix before specialization in trade. Okay, and so I did all the graphs in Excel, and so you're welcome to look at, I put my examples up here. Okay, so there's really, well, at least two ways you can do this. You can just do it on a piece of paper and draw the graphs by hand and do all the work by hand if you want. I actually find that it's probably a little bit faster if you do it that way, and that's what I would probably do if I had a whiteboard for you guys, but I had to kind of do it like this. So if you want to follow my template in Excel, you're welcome to do that, or if you think it's more effective, you know, if you have a comparative advantage in writing on paper, you can do that too. So you can answer the questions any way you want as long as you answer them, and so you can make the graphs in Excel. Might take a little bit longer, but I kind of have a template set up for you. Or if you want to just draw them by hand, you can do that too. All right. So all we're doing is plotting the curves. And so what I would say is that you're going to have, basically you have one of these, we'll do two of these right now. You'll have one more question for the homework and then one more question for the exam. So whichever way you do the homework, I'd say do the same way as the exam because it's probably easier just to be consistent. And that way, once you get it down, you get it down. All right, so all I did here is I plotted the plums on the y-axis for both countries and the apples on the x. And I put the points down there. So like point A for Spain, right, for New Zealand is 0 apples and 15 plums. And these are all the other combinations where the other extreme is 40 apples and 0 plums, or 60 apples and 0 plums. Okay, so I put those options right there. And I guess the optimal product mix before the trade was B. So you could, if you want to, you can make a little note that that's the optimal product mix. You know, it's really not that important, but they're starting at B, or New Zealand is. So they start with 10 plums, 20 apples. Okay, and I just plotted Spain's options for production. So it looks like Spain has kind of the same cost for both things. So basically, if they produce 20 of one, they give up 20 of the other. So it's kind of a one-for-one scenario where they can produce one extreme is 60 and 0 for plums, and the other is 60 and 0 for apples. Okay, and then these are the other points: plums, apples, and they start at S. So they start at 20 and 40. Okay. Okay, so again, you can open up my Excel file that I posted for you, and you can see how I did the graphs. Or you're welcome to do it by hand, but whatever is easier for you. And so we just plotted the graphs at this point, but any questions on what we've done so far? Just give me the graphs. Okay, so question B for all these questions is, are comparative cost conditions such that New Zealand and Spain should specialize, and if so, what product should each produce? So we got to calculate the opportunity cost for both goods for both countries, and whichever country has the lowest opportunity cost for that particular good, they're going to specialize and produce only that. Okay, so let's start with plums because it's on the y-axis. Okay, so the opportunity cost for New Zealand for plums is what they give up in apples. Okay, so you can look at the graph, you can look at this, but the trade-off is always the same, that each time they produce 5 plums, they give up 20 apples, right? So each time they produce 5 plums, they give up 20 apples. Okay? And if you just divide that both sides by 5, you get that 1 plum is equivalent to giving up 4 apples. Every time they want to produce a plum, basically, they have to give up 4 apples. Okay, and we showed that Spain is just a 20 for 20, or basically a 1 for 1, but every time Spain produces 20 plums, they give up 20 apples. So that's essentially, I like to start with what the graph or the chart shows you, just to make sure you don't mess it up. So 20 is minus 20, and then you know if you just divide by 20, that 1 plum is equivalent to losing an apple. So each time Spain produces 1 plum, they have to give up an apple. Now, what we're trying to figure out is which country has the lowest opportunity cost, and basically which country has the comparative advantage. So you can see that New Zealand gives up 4 apples per plum, and Spain gives up only 1 apple per plum. So Spain gives up less, they're losing more, or they're losing less every time they produce it. So they should specialize in that because they have a comparative advantage, and they should only produce plums. Alright, so Spain has a comparative advantage in producing plums, and they should specialize in plums, and they're going to produce all the plums they can and no apples, and just 50 apples via trade. Okay, so did you guys see what I'm showing you here for the specializing rule?
So we have to acknowledge on the trade, for what we want to produce, what we're losing, right?
Yeah, so we're not doing the trade yet, we're just doing the specializing. So we're trying to determine which country should specialize in which. And the country should specialize in the good they have the lowest opportunity cost in producing. And in this case, you have Spain gives up only 1 apple, where New Zealand gives up 4. So it's better to only give up 1 apple than to give up 4. So that's why they're going to specialize in plum production.
Right. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So that's all we've done so far. We haven't got to the trade yet. All right. Now we're going to do the same thing for apples, and you can see it's kind of the reverse. And so every time, right? So for New Zealand, you can look at the graph or the chart, or just flip it around. So every time New Zealand produces 20 apples, they lose 5 tons, no matter what. All right. And if you divide both sides by 20, you get that 1 apple equals, you give up a fourth of a plum. Okay, and then you should always check that the opportunity cost goes back and forth correctly. So, right, here's one plum equals minus 4 apples. So if you divide by 4, 1 apple equals a fourth of a plum. This is what you got here. Okay, so you should make sure that when you flip them around, that you get the same thing as you get here. All right, and we know that the 20 for 20 trade-off for Spain, each 20 apples they produce, they give up 20 plums. That's a 1-to-1, and we already knew that. So 1 apple equals minus 1. 1 plum equals minus 1 apple, so it must be that 1 apple equals minus 1 plum. Okay, so basically New Zealand gives up only a fourth of a plum, and Spain gives up a whole plum. So New Zealand can do apple production in a least costly way. They only give up a fourth of a plum. So they're going to specialize in that because they have a comparative advantage in apple production and only produce apples and get their plums only in a trade. Okay, so what we've determined now is that Spain's going to produce plums only. New Zealand's going to produce apples only, and they're going to gain from specializing and then determining a trade. Alright, so part C is where the total gain in both apples and plums that would result from such specialization. So basically we're starting with the initial points and then the specialization points. Okay, I started a chart in Excel, but you can see that right here. But right now we're only doing what they start with before specialization and what they have after specialization. Okay, so we were told that Spain or New Zealand starts at alternative D. So they start with 20 apples and 10 plums, and Spain starts at S. So they start with 20 apples and 40 plums. Okay, so that part there, the outputs before specialization, those are given. It'll say like, this country starts here and this country starts here. So let's start with that. Alright, so we were told New Zealand starts at this point and Spain starts at this point. And then they're going to specialize. Okay, so New Zealand's going to specialize in apples, which means they produce all apples they can. Okay, so that's going to be 60 apples, and then Spain's going to specialize in plums, and they're going to produce all the plums they can, which is 60. So they're both going to produce 60 of their respective goods. All right, so we started with these points, and now they're specializing, and so all I did here is just calculate the total gain. So the total gain in apples is now we have New Zealand producing 60 apples, and originally we had 40 combined. So here's the original before specialization. 20 plus 20 is 40. So the gain is 60 minus 40, which is 20. Okay, and the total gain in farms, we now have 60 for specializing. Originally combined, we had 10 plus 40, which is 50. So the net gain is 10 plums. So just by specializing, the whole two worlds economy here gains 20 apples and 10 plums. All right, everybody following? Yeah. Okay. So part D. Right. Perfect. So part D is where the limits of the terms of trade. All right. So we looked at this in the PowerPoint, and this part might be a little confusing at first, but it's important because you have to determine if the trade they agree upon is worthwhile for both. Okay. So Spain's going to specialize in plums, right? And so that means they're trading plums. And before they specialized, their opportunity cost was 1 plum equals minus 1 apple. All right, see that right there. That's what they started with before specialization. Okay, so the trade has to give them better than that, because if they didn't, then what would be the point of trading? Okay, so they have to get better than what they started with, which was 1 plum was going to get them more than minus 1 apple. So 1 plum got to be at least more than an apple. Okay, and New Zealand's got to get at least, they're going to specialize in apples, and the original opportunity cost was 1 apple. Basically, giving that up would give them a fourth of a plum. Okay, see that right there. Okay, so they have to do better than they would originally. So basically, all we're saying here is that Spain's going to specialize in plums, and they have to do better than their original trade-off. And New Zealand's going to specialize in apples, and they're going to do better than their original trade-off. So they got to get better than what they could have just done as a closed economy. Okay, so the limits are basically the boundaries of these two conditions. So you got to put them. It doesn't really matter what good you put it in terms, but if you put it in terms of plums, a plum. So for New Zealand, okay, so if you multiply New Zealand's condition by 4, that means that let's see, 1 plum is going to be at least 4 apples. Okay, so take this here, multiply both sides by 4. That means that minus 1 plum equals 4 apples. Okay, and then we already have it for Spain. Okay, so this just shows the limits thing. This just shows both conditions that both countries have to get to gain the trade, but I flipped it around to be just the same currency, if you will. So it's these two things in terms of plums. You could do the same in terms of apples, but we just want to know what the limits are. So basically, the trade has to be in between this. So it could be 1 plum for 2 apples. It could be 1 plum for 3 apples, but it can't be if it was 1 plum for 5 apples, then that would hurt one of the countries. If it was 1 plum for half an apple, it would hurt the other country. So it's got to be in between what they could both get domestically by just giving up that in production. Okay, so the limits of that condition right there were 1 plum equals minus 4 apples, and 1 plum equals 1 apple. So the trade has to be in between those extremes. Okay, do we see that? Okay, great. All right. So now, and again, we have another one of these. But stop me if you have any questions. But I think we're seeing we're okay so far. And so let's suppose let's suppose the actual terms of trade are 1 plum for 2 apples. You can see that comes within the condition that both countries would benefit from. So the 1 for 2 is right in, so the limits are the same as part B. Yes, basically. So you're making it in terms of like an exchange rate, basically. And so you want to show what each country has to get if they specialize. So Spain specializes in plums, and New Zealand specializes in apples, and just show what they originally had in terms of opportunity cost with using those two things, and then put that to the same exchange rate, or flip those around to the same, like one x equals something y, and 1x equals something y. In this case, it's plums. And yeah, so if you're taking the conditions from part E and just making it so it's clear that both countries gain from the trade. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's suppose the actual terms of trade are 1 plum for 2 apples. So again, that's within the limits. The limits are the extremes, so the trade has to be 1 plum for something in between 1 and 4 apples, which 2 is. And therefore, they can trade any combination of 1 to 2, right? Where we're going to trade 12 plums, so that's the terms, and they agree to trade 12 plums for 24 apples. So that's a 1 to 2 ratio, plums to apples. Okay, so what are the gains from specialization in trade for both New Zealand and Spain in both countries? Okay, again, on the Excel document, you can see that I did this part down here, just in a little spreadsheet, but let's look at it, if you want to look at that as an example. And so we already have this part. Remember, we determined what they started with and what they specialized in. So that's from here. And now we're going to do the trade. Okay, so the trade is 24 apples for 12 plums, or 12 plums for 24 apples. So that means the country that specializes in apples trades the apples and gets the plums, and vice versa. And New Zealand specializes in apples. They're trading away the 24 apples, and they're receiving the 12 plums from Spain. Whereas Spain specializes in plums. They're trading away 12 plums and gaining the 24 apples from New Zealand. So we're just showing the trade here. And then this is what happens after the trade. 60 minus 24 is 36 apples. 0 plus 12 is 12 plums. 0 plus 24 is 24 apples. And 60 minus 12 is 48 plums. Okay, so these are their outputs after trade. And then this last column is what you're looking for, which is the total gain for both products for both countries. And so see that originally Spain, New Zealand had 20 apples. Now they get 36, so they gain 16. They started with 10 plums. Now they have 12, so they gain 2 of those. And Spain started with 20 apples. Now they have 24. That's a net of 4. It's a plus 4. Spain had 40 plums. Now they got 48, so they got 8 of those. So these bold numbers, the gains from specialization and trade, which is just column 4 minus column 1, show the net gain for both countries, or the two goods. Okay, so the answer to number part E is basically that bold column, the gains for specialization trade for both respective countries. Okay, so this little, or this spreadsheet, or this chart here is basically this is the main point of this exercise. So this is what they start with. This is specializing. This is the trade. This is the leftover, the output after trade, and this is the gain. So we're showing that you can go from specializing and trade in both countries like they were are better off. Okay? Yes? Okay, and then on the last part, so it says on the same graph, add a new production possibility curve for New Zealand and Spain with specialization and trade, including a new optimal product mix in part E. Okay, so the new optimal product mix is right there, 36 and 12 and 24 and 48. Okay, and I did this in Excel. I just made new graphs for the gains from trade production possibilities curve. You can do it. If you're doing it on paper, you can just do it on the same graph where you basically show a shift. So it's up to you. So you can show it's basically like a kink out. So, okay, if they were on the same graph, what you would show, and you're welcome to do it this way or the way I did it. And so see that Spain's doing only plums. Okay, so they're going to start here, and then they can gain, like the new line will be like this. Okay, and then New Zealand does only apples, so they start here, and their new line is going to go out like this. So it kind of kinks out because they can't gain more than the thing they're specialized in, but they can gain more of the other. I mean, they don't start with this. They start with they can't produce more than they specialize in, but they can gain via trade. So this one would start here and kind of kink out, and this one would start here and kind of kink that way. Okay, and so I did it in Excel, and these are the new conditions, or the new locations. Okay, so basically what you're showing is, they're gonna, so for the new production possibilities curve with the gains, with the trade and specialization, you want to put the good they specialize in. So, New Zealand specialized in apples, so just put the apples, the original points in, and I just made, I made some new points. It went A, B, C, D, so I just made E, F, G, H. Okay, and so these are the original apples because they're specializing in that, and then they trade to get plums. Okay, but you start with just the original numbers for the apples. Okay, and then the plum option, show them all the possible trades they can get. Okay, so remember it's a 2-to-1 or a 1-to-2. Okay, so they're basically trading the deal that we specified was 1 plum equals 2 apples, right? Or 2 plums equals 1 apple. So if New Zealand traded all of their apples at 1-to-2, they can get 30 plums. If they produce 20 apples and trade the other 40, they can get 20 plums. If they produce 40 apples and trade the other 20, they can get 10 plums. So this new line, which is better than what they started with, shows that each possible, and there's other points, right? I'm just picking 4 points because we started with 4 points. But this shows all the 2-to-1 trades they can make. So they can keep the apples, or any number of apples they can trade. 1 apple, or 2 apples for 1 plum, or half an apple for a plum. Okay, and that new graph is down here. And so you can see it starts, New Zealand, it starts at the original point. This is the same for apples. But they can, all the points on here, they're gaining more and more via trade for the plums. So it started here at 60, but now the max is 30 for plums as opposed to when they started with 15. Okay, and for Spain, they're going to specialize in plums. Okay, so these are the original plots for the plums, 0, 20, 40, and 60. And then the other ones show the trade. So remember the deal, the trade is 1 plum for 2 apples. So these points show each possible trade they can make if they gave up the extra plums or apples. So if they trade all the apples, or all the plums for all the apples they can get, at 1 to 2, the 60 turns into 120 apples. If they keep 20 plums and trade 40 apples, they double that in apple production, or apple consumption, that's 80. And if they keep 40 plums and trade the other 20, they can get 20 apples. So what these new, what this blue area shows you and what this orange area shows you for Spain and New Zealand is you stick with the original points that they specialized in, and then the other ones are all the possible extra goods they can get in a trade. Okay, so if you look at, again, New Zealand, they specialize in apples. So this one went from 60 to 15, 60 apples to 15 plums. Now, they can take that 60 apples and get any number on here, including a maximum of 30 plums. Spain is going to specialize in plums. They started with endpoints of 60 and 60. And now with the trade, specialization in trade, they start with the 60 plums, they specialize, and then they can get any of these combinations of additional apples, including a maximum of 120, if they trade all the plums for apples at 1 to 2. Okay, so these graphs show that. These are the new curves that shows all the possible locations they could achieve if they specialize and make any of these trades. This is just the 1 to 2 trade, and this is the same thing. Okay, and so, and then it says you can include the new optimal product mix. I don't think I put that on there, but it would be 36 and 12 for New Zealand. Okay, so it would be like right there if you wanted to show that. And it would be 24 and 48 for Spain. Yeah, so somewhere right there. Okay, so that's all the steps for this type of problem. And we have another one we're going to do together, but any questions on this problem or type of analysis? Okay, so it seems like we're doing okay. And I think it's, and again, you can do the analysis like that. You can use my template in Excel and do it like I did it, or you can just do it on a piece of paper and whatever's easier for you. Okay, so we're going to do number 2, which is just another example of this. Just give me 1 minute. I'm gonna refill my coffee. Okay. All right. So you guys ready for one more of these, number 2, and then yeah. Okay. So we have a production possibilities table for now China and the U.S. and the forced specialization in trade. The optimal product mix for China is alternative B, and for the U.S. is alternative U. Okay, so we have all the production possibilities, alternatives for apparel and chemicals for China, and then the same for apparel and chemicals for the U.S. Okay, so part A is just to plot the curves before specialization trade. So you can plot points A through F for China, and then R through W for the U.S. At these, I'm just putting these points. All right, so you can just put the points in Excel and make a graph, or you can put the points on a piece of paper and just draw a straight line. Okay, here's China, all the trade-offs or the possibilities for apparel and chemicals. Okay, and then here's the U.S., all their possibilities for apparel and chemicals. Okay, so all I did here was plot the points and put the letters for each point. Okay, our comparative cost conditions such that China and the U.S. should specialize, and if so, what should each specialize in? Okay, so you can see that China's got kind of a 1-to-1 deal, that each time they produce 6 chemicals, they give up 6 apparel, and flip it around, each time they give up, or they produce 6 apparel, they give up 6 chemicals. So it's basically 1-to-1, but we can start with the 6 for 6 to make it clear what we're doing. Okay, producing 6 apparel, you give up 6 chemicals. Just divide by 6 to see what 1 is, and we know that 1 apparel is equivalent, producing 1 more apparel is equivalent to giving up 1 chemical. Okay, what about the U.S.? If they produce apparel, what do they give up in chemicals? Alright, so each time they produce 2 apparel, they give up 4 chemicals. So it's plus 2 minus 4, and it's the same rate along the curve. Alright, so plus 2 apparel minus 4 chemicals. Divide by 2. That means that 1 apparel is equivalent to giving up 2 chemicals. So these, for China, they give up minus 1, and for U.S., they give up minus 2. So you can see that China gives up less. So they have a comparative advantage in producing apparel, because they give up less, and they should specialize in apparel. Okay, how about for chemicals? So we know China is 1-for-1. So plus 6 is a minus 6. So 6 chemicals, they give up 6 apparel. That means that 1 chemical, they give up 1 apparel. Okay, so for the U.S., let's double check. Each time they produce 4 chemicals, they give up 2 apparel. So plus 4 minus 2, and that's the constant rate. So every time they produce 4 chemicals, they give up minus 2 apparel. So divide by 4, and that means that 1 chemical produced, you give up half an apparel. Alright, so the U.S. gives up less in chemical production. They only give up a half an apparel versus China, which gives up a whole apparel. And so they got a comparative advantage in chemicals, and they're going to specialize in chemicals. Okay, now what's the total gain in both apparel and chemicals as a result from just the specialization part? Alright, so again, just start with the original production points, and then calculate the gain in both goods from the specialization. Okay, so it tells you where they start. China starts at point B, 24 apparel and 6 chemical, and the U.S. starts at point U, 4 apparel and 12. So we're starting with those, then we're specializing, then we're showing what they both gain in total goods for both goods. Okay, these were given, right? China starts here, the U.S. starts here. Now we know that China is going to specialize in apparel, so that means they're going to produce all the apparel they can, which is 30. And the U.S. is going to specialize in chemicals. They're going to produce all the chemicals they can, okay, which is 20. And then here, what's the net gain in chemicals? So now we got 20 for the U.S. specializing. Originally, they had, the two countries combined had 6 plus 12, which is 18. So we gained 2 chemicals just by specializing. For apparel, China produces 30 now. And the original combined were 24 plus 4, which is 28. So we also gained 2 apparel. But just by specializing, we get a plus 2 in both goods. Okay, so again, this is the limits of the trade. We need to know that the trade goes in between the conditions. Okay, so we know that China is going to specialize in apparel. And originally, this is their opportunity cost. 1 apparel, you give up 1 chemical. So now with the trade, if they originally give up 1 apparel for 1 chemical, if they trade that 1 apparel, if they give that up, they got to get more than the 1 chemical. They got to get plus 1, at least 1 point, at least higher than 1. Okay, and the U.S. is going to specialize in chemicals. In the original trade-off, 1 chemical equals half an apparel. Okay, so if before specialization and trade, giving up a chemical got them half an apparel, they got to get more than that in the trade. Again, otherwise, what would be the point of trading if they didn't get more than what they started with, just being a closed economy? Okay, and the limits just show this both these conditions in terms of 1 of one thing on the left side, but we're doing it for apparel. Okay, so this says one apparel equals minus one chemicals. And if you put this in terms of apparel, multiplied by 2, that's one apparel equals 2 chemicals. Okay, so these are the limits. So trade has to be in between, if they're trading, if we're doing it for apparel as the currency, then one apparel has to be traded for something in between 1 and 2. So one apparel for 1.5 chemicals, anything between these two. There's not a whole lot of room in there, but if they make the trade in anything in between 1 and 2 for one apparel, that's better off, and both countries benefit. Okay, and now let's suppose the actual terms of trade are 1 unit of apparel for 1.5 units of chemicals. And you can see that that's within our limits. 1 for 1.5 is right in between those limits, so that's going to work. That's going to benefit both countries by making that deal. Okay, so the terms are 1 unit of apparel for 1.5 or 1.5 units of chemicals, and the actual deal is 4 units of apparel for 6 units of chemicals. Okay, so this is the trade-off of the ratio, but they're going to actually trade 4 apparel for 6 chemicals, which is the 1 to 1.5 ratio. Okay, so given that trade, let's calculate the gains from specialization and trade for both China and the U.S. Okay, so we already did this part, columns 1 and 2. We got the original points, specialization. Now let's do the trade that was dictated by part E. Okay, so the trade is 6 units of chemicals for 4 units of apparel. All right, so China has the apparel now. They're going to trade that 4 apparel minus 4 apparel and get the 6 chemicals. So this is the exchange they make. Whereas the U.S. specialized in chemicals, they're going to trade away the 6 chemicals and get the 4 apparel in return. So this just shows the trade that both countries make. Now, this is what they have left after the specialization and trade. So 0 plus 6 is 6. 30 minus 4 is 26. And 20 minus 6 is 14 chemicals. 0 plus the 4 in the trade is 4 apparel. So these are the outputs after this trade. And let's see what they both gained. And sometimes they don't gain in both goods, which they didn't here, but they're going to gain something. So the whole point is no country can be worse off after the trade. All right, so they started with 6, China, chemicals, and they have 6, so they didn't gain anything there, but they started with 24 apparel. Now they got 26, so they got a plus 2 in apparel. The U.S. started with 12 chemicals. They got 14 now, so that's a plus 2. And they have the same amount, 4 apparel. So that's, they didn't gain anything there, but they're both better off after the trade. And so the gains for each nation are these bold numbers here. Okay. And on the same graph, let's add the new production possibility curves for China and U.S. with specialization and trade, including the new optimal product mix from each, which would be 6 and 26 for China and 14 and 4 for the U.S. So this one I did them separately in Excel. You're welcome to do it like I did it, or you can draw the new curve on the same graph and show like the additional, the shift out if you want to, or you can do them separately. Okay, so I did them here in the examples, chapter 16, tab 2. This is the one for question 2, China and the U.S. All right, so here's the original graphs. And again, we're calculating the new curve as a shift out or a kink from the original. So you want to start with the original production points for the specialized good. All right, so this is the new one, the blue. So they specialize in apparel, so leave that the same. And then for this part, show what they can gain with each possible trade, right? And I just made, like we started A, B, C, D, E, F. I just made A prime, B prime, whatever for the new ones. And so these shows what they're specializing in, and then this shows every possible trade, or every possible trade in the same denomination, A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, so they're going to produce all apparel. China, they're specializing. If they trade all of it, it's 1 to 1.5, so that means 30 times 1.5, they can gain 45 chemicals. Now, if they keep 6 apparel and trade the other 24, they can gain 30. I actually wrote a formula here. So the formula is basically what they start with, minus what they're keeping, and then the rest they can trade. And so the additional 24 times 1.5 could give them 36 chemicals. Or if they kept 12, they can gain 27 chemicals, and so on. So these show all the possible gains they can get in chemicals for the trade they agreed upon. All right, and then the U.S., they're going to specialize in chemicals, so keep the same points there. And this didn't come out evenly because 1 to 1.5 is, if you flip it around, that's 1 to 2/3. Yeah. So these are all like something over 3. So this is a 1 to 1.5 ratio is the same as a 1 to 2/3. So it comes out in decimals, but it looks fine if you do the graph. Okay, so they could trade all those 20 chemicals that they're specialized in for 2/3 of that if they flip the trade around, which is 13.3 or 13 1/3. Or they could keep 4 and trade the other 16 and get 10.67 apparel, and this is the same rate, right? So all we're doing here is that China kept specializing the apparel, and these are all the trades they can make at 1 to 1.5 if they wanted to. And the U.S. specializes in the chemicals, and these are all the trades they can make at basically 1 to 1/3 because that's the other way around. All right, and you can see that the new curves have been extended or shifted out for both countries. All right, so China started with 30 and 30, and now they start with a 30 apparel, but they can gain any of the viewpoints, including up to 45 chemicals. Okay, so this is the new curve, which is kind of like that. And the U.S. started with 10 and 20, and now they're at they start here with the 20 for the specialized chemicals, and these are all the trades they can make up to, this is like 13 and a third. All right, so basically what we're showing is here's the specialized point, and any point along this trade curve, they'll be better off than what they started with, and then the same for China. They start here, and then any point along their trade curve, if it's a 2 to 1 trade, they're better off. So essentially, as long as they make any trade that they can both agree on, they're both going to be better off. Okay, and then I put those graphs here, and if you wanted to, you could show the new choices of, so the outputs after specialization and trade should be on that new curve. So 6 and 26 for chemicals and apparel. All right, that's somewhere right there. Okay, yeah, let me look at this question in a second. And then 14 and 4 for chemicals and apparel is somewhere right there. Okay, so the question is, can you explain how you get the numbers for the second one? Yes. Okay, so these ones, Akalis? Okay. All right, so it's not too complicated, but you got to see what we're trying to show all the possible trades they can make for both countries. And so over here, these are the original options for China. Okay, and you want to keep the ones which they're going to specialize in. Okay, so they're going to specialize in apparel. So these apparel numbers should be the exact same. So those the specialized alternatives should be the exact same. Now these ones should be higher because they're going to make a trade at 1 to 1.5, so be better off. Okay, so these are the original. They're specializing it, so they have all the apparel. All right, so the only way they can get chemicals now is to trade. Okay, so these are all the scenarios that they could trade, okay, to put on that line. So 30 apparel is all they can produce. If they trade all of that, the trade rate is 1 apparel equals 1.5 chemicals. So multiply this by 1.5, and that's a possibility of 45. Okay, so if they trade all this 30, they can get 4.5 chemicals, and that's a 1 to 1.5 trade. Now the other points along here are if they kept some of the apparel for themselves, which they're probably going to do, and then trade the other chemicals at the same rate. So here, they kept 6 apparel, which must mean they traded 24. And 24 times 1.5 is 36. Here, they must have kept 12 apparel, and that means they had to trade 18. 18 apparel will give them 27 chemicals. Here they kept 18, which must mean they traded 12. 12 times 1.5 would give them 18 chemicals. And then here they kept 24, which means they traded 6. 6 times 1.5 is 9. So this is all what they kept of their specialized good. And this is what they could get in a trade at the 1 to 1.5 trade rate. Okay, and if you, I put the formulas in here of how I got it. So it's basically, they started with 30, so 30 minus what they kept times the trade rate is what they could get in the other good, which is chemicals. Okay, do we see that? Okay, and I'll explain the U.S. one because it only looks more complicated because the numbers are in thirds, but okay, so the same with the U.S. This is what they started with. All right, and they're going to specialize in chemicals, right? So keep the chemicals the same. So this row is the same as that row. So we're starting with the same exact chemicals because they have all the chemicals to start with. Okay, and then these are all the options that they can get where if they trade some of their chemicals for apparel, and again, the trade is one apparel for 1.5 chemicals, which is the same as one chemical for 2/3 of an apparel. All right. So it comes out in thirds, but we got to keep the same rate if you go the other way. Okay, so if they kept all their chemicals, they're not going to get any apparel, but these are all the combinations of which they can get some apparel at 1 to 2/3 of an apparel. So here, they kept 16, which means they traded 4, and 4 times 2/3 is 2.6 apparel getting back from China. Here they kept 12, which means they had to trade 8. 8 times 2/3 would give them 5.33 apparel from China. Here they kept 8, which means they traded 12. 12 times 2/3 gives us a nice 8. And here they kept 4, which means they traded 16. 16 times 2/3 is 10.67 from China. And here they traded everything. So 20 times 2/3 would give them 13 1/3 apparel. Okay, so these are all the combinations they can get in the constant trade rate from China, depending on how many they want to keep for their own economy. Okay. Okay, and then these are the new graphs that show all the prime points they can get. I mean, you start with the original specialization point. For China, you start here, and it kind of extends out. These are all new points they can get by gaining with the trade from the U.S. And the U.S. starts here with 20 chemicals, and these are all the possible gains that they can get in trading with China. And you'll note that all the points on the new curves extend beyond what they had before, except the other point of the only point that's on the same curve is that they kept all the goods for themselves, the specialized goods. So China's new curve starts here and kind of goes out like that, like the new graph shows you, and the U.S.'s new curve starts here and extends out. So, yeah. Okay. Questions on these problems? Okay. All right. So let me show you guys the homework question for this chapter. And so under the study guides updated yesterday, we just did this. You have as an example. There's my Excel file. You can use that as an example if you want to use that. And then the homework question, homework chapter 16. Okay, so there's only one question, and this is due next Monday in the homework chapter 16 discussion forum. So it seems like everybody's been able to turn in their homework via the discussion forum, so that seems to be working okay. And So here we have another example that you just got to do the same exact analysis that I showed you in those two examples. We can use those as a reference. So we got two economies, Kentucky and Cuba, and they're producing cigars and bourbon. All right, and here are the production possibilities curves points for both. Okay, and all you have to do, what you have to do is plot the original curves, and they should be straight lines because the rate of trade or the opportunity cost is the same from each point to point. Okay, so plot the two curves and determine what the opportunity costs are for each good for each country and which good should be specialized by which country. Then part C, remember you get what they start with. Kentucky starts at B and Cuba starts at U. And what's the gain just by specializing from the original points? Okay, the limits are find out, and this is an extension of B, but start with the good that each is specializing in, find out what they originally had as an opportunity cost, and then that's the point at which they have to exceed. So they got to get better than the original trade-off. And just put the limit into the same good. So just put it into like one cigar equals blank, one cigar equals blank for both countries, and the limits are those. So the trade's got to be in between to benefit both countries. Okay, and then I'm gonna give you a trade that's within the limits because it's gonna have to benefit both countries. So if your limits go outside of it 1 for 1, all right, so I made a nice easy trade where they trade 1 million cigars for 1 million bottles of bourbon. That's the deal, and then they trade 50 for 50. Okay, so once you do this, make the economy that specializes in bourbon trade 50 bourbons in exchange for 50 cigars. And then part F is to show the new production possibilities curves, which starts with the starting point of specializing, and then all the other accommodations they can get by trading with the other country at, in this case, the 1 for 1 trade-off. Okay, and again, you can do this just on a piece of paper if you want to draw the graphs by hand with a pencil or pen or whatever. You can use Excel, you can use Word, it's whatever you like to do. Okay, and that one, chapter 16, goes here in the sessions. Okay, and next time, this one, chapter 16, is due next Monday, April 13th. And like it has on the updated syllabus, the midterm 2, which is the take-home exam, is due Monday, April 20th. So that's basically in 2 weeks. And so that means the way I kind of set this up is that our next meeting will be no new material. We can just do kind of a review for the exam. And if you guys want me to emphasize or go over questions that are more difficult, we can do those ones that you guys want to do. Okay, so let's see. Just for chapter 16, any questions on the chapter 16 problems or what to do for this assignment? Okay, yeah, I'll do that. Okay. Okay, yeah, it looks like Okay, so I had, okay, I count everybody did. Yeah, one person left. 20 people were participating, so that's, there was only one person that wasn't here that I already knew about, but, I know the one person that wasn't here, so everyone else was good for, showing up to the meeting. And, let's see, I guess, that's what I had for today, for chapter 16, to go over those big examples. And so, I'm happy to stay on a little bit if you guys have additional questions on the previous material, or anything else. If you feel good about everything for chapter 16 and so on, you're welcome to log off, because we're done with all the new material. And so I'll stay on for a little bit just in case we have additional questions. But if not, that's going to wrap it up for today's new material. And I'll see everyone that's leaving, or everyone that's going to leave, next Monday at the same time as 6:50. And again, make sure you come next time. I mean, you guys have been almost full attendance every time, so I'm not worried about that. But oh wait, we have a question. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to go over the material before the midterm. Will the midterm be multiple choice based or similar to homework? It's the midterm is going to be very similar to the homework assignments. So the homework ones you've done for chapters 6, 7, 8, 9, 16. You're basically going to get new questions for each of those homework questions. So if you understand all the homework questions, you're going to do really well in the midterm. And how do you find the outputs before specialization? Okay, so the outputs before specialization are just given in the problem. And so it tells you in like the little intro that the optimal product mix for Kentucky is alternative B, and for Cuba is alternative U. So they're just starting, like that's given. It's just, Kentucky starts here, and Cuba starts here. Okay? Alright. Okay, so I'll stay on for additional questions, and if you don't have any, you're welcome to sign off. And thanks for showing up again, and please stay safe. I'll see you guys same time next week via WebEx.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.